Welcome to the Arbutus Analyzer tutorial series. This tutorial will discuss how to use enhanced capabilities in Analyzer to debug or troubleshoot your procedures. When writing a process to run repeatedly, also known as a script or procedure, end users will almost always initially make a mistake or two. This is to be expected and this is okay. Nobody's perfect. What we've tried to do is add certain tools and capabilities to make troubleshooting when errors occur much easier. For instance, if I open this procedure, you can see in the procedure editor along the left-hand side there are line numbers. Whenever we encounter a problem with the procedure, the log file will identify which line number the problem occurred. Something else we've done to try to make things a bit easier is to color code the actual procedure editor. This allows users to quickly learn the command syntax by looking at commands, macros, parameters, and other attributes of the scripting language. To change the colors from the default settings, go to Tools, Options, and select the Editor tab. By default, the colors for the various different parameters and scripting attributes are listed. To change any of those colors, simply click on a color palette and choose the color of your choice. Something else that's been added is to quickly identify matching parentheses for functions. This may not sound like a big deal, but when you have several functions embedded within one another, and you're trying to figure out if you have the proper number of parentheses and which grouping goes together, it sometimes becomes a little bit difficult to figure out. By color coding these in red, we can quickly see which of the functions have matching parentheses or not, and where they occur. If I were to run the extract batch simply by right-clicking and selecting Run, we'll have an example of how the scripting language and the command log work together. The command log identifies that there is a problem with the script located at line 100. As mentioned before, if I go into the procedure editor for this particular procedure and I scroll down to line 100, we can see the problem occurs right here. The issue is we're trying to do something based upon a value, in this case server, which doesn't exist. It was never initialized. One of the ways in which you can solve this problem, if it's not immediately apparent like this one, is you could put a breakpoint. By right-clicking and going to Toggle Breakpoint, what we can do is we can introduce a stop at that particular moment in the procedure, and this will allow us to process all of those first 99 lines. When I do this, let me just go back here and close my other tables first. When I make that change, when I add the breakpoint, I can simply step into the extract procedure editor, I'll right-click, and I'll say Save and Run. At this point, when you do that, you'll notice that the status line at the bottom, on the left-hand side here, not only tells you that the procedure is running, which it does all the time when you run a procedure, but it tells you that you're in step mode. It tells you the next command is at line 99, and that's because that's where we put the breakpoint. And then it also tells you can press F6 to go into what we call step mode, which is to walk through the procedure one line at a time, or you can press F7 to run the entire procedure. Again, if I go back in here, at this stage of the game, the breakpoint is still there at line number 99. You'll notice there's a little yellow arrow that's been introduced as well. This yellow arrow is an indicator of where we are in the procedure, and as mentioned by the status line below, if I wanted to step one line at a time through the rest of this procedure, I could just hit F6. If I hit F6, it'll step down to line 100. Now at this point, it hasn't executed line 100. It's just sitting there waiting to execute that line. If I were to go out to the command log and initialize the server variable manually, if I were then to come back into the editor and step the line, you'll see it doesn't fail now. It doesn't fail because that line required a server variable to be initialized as something, and then we're going to test that. In this case, it says if the server variable is equal to some value, which it wasn't, then we're going to assign another variable equal to something. Now I can step through the remaining lines one at a time if I want. You'll notice we open up the demo table. I step down to the next line. In this case, it says we're going to open another table as a secondary. You can see in the overview, test EX13 has now been opened with a little number 2 beside it. It tells us it's a secondary table. And now I could step through line by line. I can start to do my join. Okay, creates a table. I can do the count. Okay. At this stage, I could continue to run through the procedure one line at a time. However, if I think that I've corrected the problem, what I can do now is I can just press F7 to continue on and run the rest of this procedure, which I'll do now. Okay. It's completed. We can tell that because our status line has changed. It just says ready. We're not in step mode anymore, and there were no errors. So we can close down our procedure. When we go to the log file, we can see that the procedure is actually completed. Now, if I scroll back in the line here in my procedure editor, we can see that the toggle mode for the breakpoint is still in play. I can right-click, turn off the toggle, turn off the breakpoint, and now if I want to, I can go back into my procedure and I can add in that line server equals loc, or whatever value I wanted to put in there. So this time I will not get any errors whatsoever. If I were to right-click, save and run, we'll see that it's running and now it's done. So we've added some capabilities that make using the product and troubleshooting procedures or scripts a little bit easier than normal. You can introduce breakpoints to run a large portion of the procedure and stop just before the issue occurred. You can then go out into the log file to either display all of your variables, for instance, to see what they are, or you could simply quickly identify the problem at that line that was identified, make the change, and then proceed on. You can proceed one line at a time using step mode, or you can make the change pressing F7 to proceed through the rest of the procedure. For additional information about enhanced troubleshooting and debugging, please see the Analyzer help or contact your local distributor.